All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Jonathan Lipp, director of the Big Apple Film Festival, and thank you for joining us at the Big Apple Film Festival podcast. I am here today with our guest, Michael McGlone. Michael, how you doing?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me.
All right, so let me give a little bit of a background. Michael came onto the scene in the mid-'90s, starring in the Brothers McMullen, which is the debut feature film of Ed Burns. The film won the Grand Jury Award at the Sundance Film Festival, was later released by Fox Searchlight. That was followed up by She's the One, which Michael, again, starred in with Ed Burns, along with Jennifer Aniston and Cameron Diaz, Amanda Peet, John Mahoney. Great cast. And from there, we saw Michael in The Bone Collector with Denzel Washington and Angelina Jolie, Hardball with Keanu Reeves, The Bachelors with J.K. Simmons and Julie Delpy, and some really great recent TV appearances. We've seen Michael in NCIS Hawaii, in The Rookie Feds, in SWAT, and he has a recent project called Kenny the Gun, that Michael actually wrote, produced, and directed, and stars in as Detective Kenneth Patrick Sullivan.
Oh my goodness! Wow, you're giving the full name. I love it.
Who's a New York City detective, and that's his own project. So Michael is a writer, director, a producer, an actor. He's also a musician as well. I can go on and on. But
thank you for that fabulous introduction. I was enwrapped. Actors love to listen to any expression about them. So thank you so much for that lovely and illustrious introduction.
Well, thank you so much for being here. So Michael's actually based in LA now, but he's here in the Big Apple this week, and we're happy to have him. So
I'm happy to be here.
So let me begin first. Let's talk about the industry as a whole. So now, as I mentioned, you came onto the scene mid-'90s. So we're talking almost 30 years at this point, and there's been so many changes in this business, right? Just so many. It's evolved. So many. It's just changed in so many ways. Now, of course, independent film has been around, for ages, right? You go back to the late 19th century with a film like Herald Square, right? Which was directed by one of Thomas Edison's assistants, made right here in New York City. And that was actually the first projectable film, they say. And then you go into the 20th century, Andy Warhol films, into the 90s. We talked about films like McMullen and Blair Witch.
Halloween was an independent film.
Halloween, a lot of the great horror films, Halloween, Friday the 13th, the Night of the Living Dead, all the, so, I mean, we can go on and on about independent film. But I think in the last probably 30 years, we have seen a change in this industry like never before.
Explosive change.
It's just incredible. I mean, social media, YouTube, being able to make films on your phone.
iPhone film festivals.
And the distribution opportunities now. I mean, back in, when you were coming up in the 90s, if a film got distribution, it was like, wow, you got to distribute it. Now, I mean, you could make your movie available to the entire world instantaneously. That said, in your experience, what have you seen as sort of the biggest changes that have occurred in this industry since you began and to where you are now?
The greater abundance of content, especially in more recent years. Though you could go back to when Brothers exploded on the scene in 1995 and say that in ways, as a result of its meteoric success, the independent film market took note and independent filmmakers took note in a very encouraged way and started making more movies. I think more people felt confident that there was a market for something that had heart, didn't have a lot of money, and was in need of greater attention. So the proliferation of independent films, truly independent, meaning that you don't have any outside money, it's all interior, and bringing that to the world through film festivals. I think after Brothers McMullen, in part because of Brothers McMullen, I don't think it's undue credit. I think its success created a conversation and a reality about what young people or any age can do with a shoestring budget and a great story. So, and it opened up the film festival world to new festivals like yours, where there's this explosion of people making films, and they're not all going to Sundance anymore, because now Sundance has almost become a studio in of itself. And I don't even know if they would consider that an independent film festival anymore. Or if they do, it has to be adjusted in its definition, because so many films go there now that aren't truly independent. I mean, you have Fox Searchlight blockbusters that are going to Sundance Film Festival. And that's not in degradation to that. That's an evolution of that. It's been enfolded into the industry in a major way, and that's fabulous. I love that. And it also made room for film festivals like yours to be a new Sundance in the 90s, where people can go and then they can explode from there. So that is one of the early changes. And then from there, an extension of that in the film world was streaming, because I think that's connected. I think the explosion of independent work in the film world then has had tentacles into the TV world, because now people are making independent TV shows. And I've made pilot presentations myself, where you have a proof of concept, you have your own money, you shoot it, it looks great, it looks broadcastable, and then you put it in front of someone and you look to sell the show that way. So the independent TV market now has been born, and that's also fabulous. So those two changes are probably the most salient, and the number of outlets that are open to independent content also. You look at the streaming services, the explosion of that. So many artists and writers and actors and crew members have been employed more readily and more abundantly because there was just more happening. And that has changed slightly, though it's still very abundant.
Right, right. You know, in terms of the streaming, and it's so interesting now because, you know, the first time ever, I talked to filmmakers who, and I've asked them, would you rather have a limited theatrical run or be on Netflix? I'd rather be on Netflix. They'd rather be on the small screen, right? Which is you know, so interesting. But in terms of the streaming, you know, I'm wondering, do you think there's maybe too much content to the point that it's difficult now to stand out? Right? Like you go back to the golden age of Hollywood, right? Go to, you know, 1940s, you know, you had 15, 20 movies come out a year. It's like a big deal. You know, this movie's, you know, now it's, you know, every, you know, you turn on Netflix every day. Oh, a new Netflix original, a new Hulu original.
Right, right.
So I'm wondering if you think maybe there's too much content that now as a filmmaker, it's perhaps more difficult to stand out?
I will answer that first in a more humorous way and say that throughout history, there has been arguably too much content. Whether you're talking about BC era, AD, there are things being made that we didn't need to see that. We didn't need to see you make that. And I say that humorously because obviously everything's being made for a purpose, and it's our job to see what purpose it has. Though people have been producing content that most of the world would say, I don't necessarily need that. And that is going to remain the case because there are a lot of people out there who want to make something, and maybe they're in the midst of their evolution as an artist. And so it's going to be not as excellent as potentially they can do it in 10 years, but it's going to get out there and someone's going to see it. And maybe someone's even going to like it, though there are more and more people making content. And I think there are more people making content now than ever before. I don't have the metric, but I would be surprised if it weren't true that there was more content to consume now than ever before in human history. And social media is a part of that too.
Yeah.
So, but to answer the question in a more serious way, too much content, an overabundance of content has actually been noted by streamers and networks. More by streamers because the networks, they downsize their production because of the streaming competition. They knew they had to be more surgical in their competition, and their viewership was going down because a lot of it was going to streamers. So they had to make it more of a hit factory than a guessing game or a gamble where they'd have a pilot season that was abundant with numerous pilots that wouldn't be made into TV shows. The pilot seasons, I'm not even sure if you can call it a pilot season anymore because they're so few and far between. So the streaming evolution, the streaming revolution has changed the market in every way.
Yeah.
And to your very intelligent observation, there is an overabundance of content, and some of it is not being watched because people don't hear about it, it's not advertised, or it's being watched very minimally because it's not that great. And I'm not a trash talker. I'm talking from an objective reality. There are things that are being put on networks and streamers that aren't flying because they're just not good.
Yeah.
And the streamers and the networks have always had different shows on with different audiences and also different audience responses. So there are always going to be those that thrive and there are always going to be those that don't. That's the nature of the artistic expression. Artists create. I look at things that I've created and some of them are superior to others. That's the nature of the human experience. So that won't change. What has changed though is the surgicality with which streamers now are producing, because they have produced so much and they bought so much and they saturated their platforms so much. And I think what they realized was they don't have as much audience for their content. And so if you don't have the audience, you're not going to have the return that you're looking for on everything. So there was the explosion, and now it's still a huge market, though I don't know that they're buying as much. And I think the discernment level has risen. So potentially more quality-driven purchases, less quantity-driven acquisition.
If you were giving advice to an aspiring filmmaker now, let's say a film student just coming out of film school, would you think that maybe a very, very specific niche type of film might be a better way to go in order to stand out a bit, like maybe a documentary about a specific person or a specific topic, or a biopic about someone who has a fan base, like, you know, something like, would that be beneficial, you think, to sort of stand out?
Only if they have an equal enthusiasm for all those different genres.
Okay.
The most important thing for any artist to do is to be authentic. And you do not want to create for anyone else's agenda.
Mm-hmm.
God gave you your vision. God gave you your gifts, and they are unique. Everyone's gifts are like their DNA. No one's going to tell that story the way you do. No one has your code.
Right.
And so to think of it in terms of what's the market looking for is erroneous. The market is looking for you to be ultimately authentic. The market will always want something that is ultimately itself, period. Look at all the success throughout history. People want to see dynamism. They want to see something bold. They want to see things that are unafraid to be themselves. And that's great art. So don't produce for anyone else's agenda but yours. And I'm not saying don't pay attention to what's out there and learn from what's out there and maybe tailor your craft to be as excellent as it can be based on what you can learn from what others are doing. Because I'm still learning from actors, from filmmakers, from producers, from books I'm reading. I'm constantly learning. I'm learning from you in this interview. So it's constantly happening that I'm enhancing my way of creating by benefit of what others' gifts are. What I'm saying is don't try to create to be accepted. Create knowing that you will be accepted based on your authenticity and based on how courageous you are about doing that.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, you have to do something that you are passionate about, something that meaningful to you. Otherwise, you're not even going to enjoy the process. If you're just trying to please other people and you're just trying to create for other people and it's not about you, you're going to burn out anyway. You're not.
And if you have success with that, what is that success worth outside of the fame and the cash? The fame and the cash are not, even though as an artist, I would admit that the fame and the cash are seductive, and I've been seduced by them, and it's still in my psyche to enjoy the thought of great wealth and acclaim. I love attention. I'm a Leo. You are too, I think.
No, I'm an Aquarius.
Oh, you're Aquarius. Oh, so we're actually a good match. Actually, that's a good symbiosis. Though it's all good symbiosis when you're loving people. I will say that I love being paid attention to. I love making money. I love having the comfort that comes with money. Though, if I didn't have the acclaim, if I didn't have the money, I love creating more than anything. Yeah. I love the gifts that the Lord has given me to execute human expression at a high level and to be proud of it and to show it to other people and see that they laugh at it or think about it as a result. It's dynamic and it's beautiful. And I know that I was born to do all these things. So even in the times where I've had an impecunious reality, and they have happened in recent years, all of us had probably some significant change financially or otherwise that changed our perspective, and mine to the better. I didn't know it at the time, but it was a blessing to me to go through that fluctuation. It was intense, maybe the most intense in my life. And I realized that even though there was all that stress, there wasn't any doubt that I was doing what I was meant to do. There isn't ever any doubt about that. Even when I'm actually looking for other jobs that aren't perfectly aligned with my creative output and my artistic career because I need to make money, I know that that's not an abdication of my creative output and my creative career. That is because I had to be realistic and the money isn't coming in right now, so I have to be very creative about how I'm going to be making money. Nothing was ever in replacement of my artistic endeavors, and the artistic endeavor for an artist has to be primary. Going back to the original source of this answer, which is the question, what are you doing it for? If not for that reason, the fame and the cash they're benefits that are seductive, but at the same time, if that's all that you're getting out of it, you're potentially going to kill yourself. You can look at all the different people who believed in the depth of fame and cash, who had to see it was hollow, if that's the only thing keeping you going, and people who don't have an authentic, principled reality when it comes to what they're doing with their lives and doing what they love, et cetera. You can fall into any number of destructive areas in life. It has to be based in love. It has to be based in nourishment of your heart, your soul, your mind. And that's what a truly authentic artistic career will give you.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like whether you're an actor, a filmmaker, a writer, could even be a professional athlete, a musician, it seems that fame and cash is simply a result of passion, I mean, if you look, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a result. It's correct. A result of passion. It's a result of doing what you love. Mm-hmm. There was an interview many years ago with Magic Johnson, and he said something like, money is great, fame is great. He's like, but I'll tell you, when it comes down to it, I want to win championships.
Yeah, brother.
I want to win championships.
That's a great athletic equation to what I'm talking about.
And when he said it, I thought to myself, right, that's why you have the money you have and the fame you have, because that's how you view things. Yeah. And so that's, I agree, it's a result.
So to put it in Magic Johnson's example, for anybody, what's your championship?
Right.
What's your championship? What results in the feeling of winning a championship for you? Is it writing a great poem? Is it creating something in the medical field? Is it helping other people as a nurse? There are so many different ways to be activated and magnetized to greatness. And that's what true experience and authenticity does. You're magnetized to your true purpose. and it's beautiful. And I speak from experience.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I feel like, in terms of, all this whole thing, fame and cash and everything you're talking about, it's like, if you don't love what you're doing and you're not making
those
art
are going to,
that's useful to the world, there's not going to be any fame and cash. It's a result of doing great things, right? And that has to come first.
Yeah, indeed.
And looking at your, some of your recent projects now, Kenny the Gun, which we screened at the Big Apple Film Festival some years back, so that was great.
Yeah.
Tell us a little about your recent project, Kenny the Gun, your detective Kenneth Patrick Sullivan.
I would say first that Kenny the Gun connected to our discussion of authenticity and pursuing what is most singular to you. Kenny the Gun was born out of my desire to make people laugh, to get attention. And I don't mean that in a superficial way, because it's deep in my nature to want attention. It's also deep in my nature to give other people attention. Thank God I've been directed to balance my desire to give attention and receive attention, because when I was younger, it was more about receiving attention than giving attention. And now I can openly say that receiving attention is nourishing, and what's equally nourishing is being an audience member and helping someone else fly and get the adulation they need in their lives to feel really loved and powerful. So when I was on the set of The Bone Collector, I was playing a character named Kenny Solomon.
Right.
And I wore a gun, I was a detective, and I just, out of my desire to make people laugh and to do bits and be a showman, I create this character that I'm calling Kenny the Gun.
I was going to ask you that, if Kenny came from your character in The Bone Collector.
It wasn't a television show. It was strictly a comedic character that made people laugh when I would walk up in front of them and say, "It's Kenny." And then I'd flip the jacket back. He had his signature move. You saw the signature move. He still has it. And then he'd tap on the gun. The gun. And so it's this larger-than-life character that I'd walk up to my co-stars and do that bit, and they'd always smile. And then I'd do a little bit with them and say, "Oh, my friend, what do you need to talk about? What are you going to talk about?" So it's this wonderful character that brought me joy, that brought them joy. And then I decided I'm going to create a television series around this dynamic character. And I did. And I have a show called Kenny the Gun, which I produced a pilot presentation for, which was a short film also that screened it at your festival. And now it has evolved beyond that. And there's another series that based on the same character that is in development currently. And I won't say more about that now because I need to preserve the creative integrity and the creative energy of that process. But that is very much alive and well. And there's another project that is also at present confidential. That is the reason I'm here in New York. And we're going to be casting on July 2nd. We're having a casting day. Some roles are already accounted for, one of which I will play. And we're looking forward to that unfolding as well. And I am blessed, Jonathan, in numerous ways. Professionally, personally, creatively, I can say openly that there is not one aspect of my life that is not being enriched right now abundantly. And my faith is at the center of all of that. I love the Lord. I love everything that I'm being given in this life. And I love loving other human beings. And whether I'm doing it through my creative expression or in a conversation like this, or on the street smiling at somebody or striking up a conversation with someone that I hadn't met before, I love my life. And it is my faith that it all comes from the Lord, and we're here to love each other. And that's what I want to do through my work and personally. And I'm being afforded all the opportunity I need to do it. And I'm blessed.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I'm very similar in that respect. I focus on the positive of things all the time. If anything negative happens, I view it as a learning experience. I take a moment, think about it, and say, okay, now what did I just learn from this?
Right.
I focus on the positive
and
things.
then, forgive my interruption, though I want to share this in terms of the language you just used. When you perceive something as negative and then you interpret it the way you just said you do, negative no longer becomes an apt word.
Right.
Because how can that be a negative experience if you're more enhanced by it?
Right. That's right. Yeah. It's interesting, your outlook as well, because you're empowering yourself too. You're recognizing that you're in control of your happiness, you're in control of your life, and that's what brings happiness, I think, recognizing that.
Everything is being placed before us, in my experience, my detailed experience, my profound experience, to enhance our lives, and that we have a more wise and intelligent practice of identifying how we can conduct ourselves in the world. One of the best examples of that from my own life is the recent impecunious circumstances that I found myself in, to the point that grocery shopping became a very significant event in terms of the prices and what I can afford to eat, literally, and every dollar being important to log and to get if I could, because I wasn't getting them for a bit. And this humbling experience, and I say that word with love because I know that was given to me out of love too. I needed to be in that experience for a number of reasons. One was to realize my own practice of the belief that you and I were just sharing is our shared belief, that everything is to my benefit. I was brought to a place where I was so stressed about how I was going to survive and if I was going to be able to maintain my way of life, literally, that I had to investigate where the Lord was in my life. And it has bloomed a relationship spiritually for me that has been stronger and more beautiful with the Lord than ever before. And it was through that humbling experience that I was able to see that it actually wasn't a humbling experience finally. It was in literal fact, though it's the results of it rather were something that made me stronger, made me better, and brought me into an experience of being able to love others and love myself more profoundly than I've ever been able to do before. And so that it's clear for any of your listeners or anyone watching this, there's no implicit religiosity to when I use the word Lord and when I talk about my faith. I was raised Catholic, and with no disrespect to that faith that dear loved ones of mine practice, I do not have an organized religious affiliation in my faith. My faith in the Lord has a very apparent fact about it, and it's also mysterious. And I believe everyone has a relationship to their experience and their love of life and their love, period, that is both very clear and also very mysterious. So I respect the fact that we can't explain all these things, and that your practice of it, if it's in love, I'm with you, and I want the best for you. I want the best for everybody. My practice is love and to honor the Lord as the captain of the team of love. And I've been placed as a player with particular abilities to excel, and I want to use those humbly to do so. And when I say excel, I'm not necessarily first thinking about my professional career. I'm talking about other people's lives being enhanced because they met me, and my life being enhanced because I met other people. That's the most important thing in this life. And I can do it through my creative life, though that's not the only way I can do it. And arguably, it's not always the most important way for me to do it.
And you make it a point to surround yourself with positive people, people who want to help others, supportive people.
Definitely.
Because I would think that's
yes, it's necessary. And when I come in contact with people with whom I don't have a consistently smooth, peaceful, and productive continuum, I know that it has to do with there being some kind of blockage to that happening. And I am in daily meditation on making sure that I'm not blocked to that. And I don't speak from a pedestal, and I have no feeling of superiority to other people fundamentally. I do know, no less, that my dedication to having a positive expression and a positive experience is such a daily practice that I have means by which I can identify if it's me or if it's someone else more abundantly that is interfering with the flow. And if I find that it's someone else more abundantly interfering with that continuum, I will most often bring it up and see if we can work through it so that we adjust and both have the most dynamic relationship with each other and in life. And if I find that it's not possible that we can have that from either side, I know that I need to have that continuum in order to have the life that I've designed. It has been designed for me. And when you have a relationship that you need to step away from physically, it doesn't mean that you're abdicating love. Even with family members, my love is eternal, period. If we don't have a physical contact or an active contact in the relationship, it does not mean that I don't want the best for you. It does not mean that I don't love you. In fact, those things go on eternally because that's the nature of love. All it means is we can't have a productive continuum. And I have acknowledged it. I've judged it to the best of my ability, and I want the best for you. And if that ever changes going forward, I'm open to things returning, to relationships resuming. Though if it doesn't have that component of mutual agreement about if there's something that comes up that needs positive communication, we're going to have that positive, open communication. If it's revealed that we don't have that agreement, I will not spend a great deal of time negotiating something that I already know the result of. It's frustration, and I'm not here to be frustrated anymore. In the past, when I was still using alcohol and before I had an awareness that was akin to what I'm sharing with you now, I was about frustration. I am no longer about frustration. And now when I identify that someone else might be or is, I leave you to that relationship, and I want the best for you. And I want you to heal whatever needs healing for you to see that you're entitled to greater than that. And I must step back and be free of this interaction.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've said to people before, you should always want the best for people. You
Definitely.
should always, no matter what happens, you should always want to see them, do well and feel, and wish them the best. And I've had people say to me, well, why would I want that person to feel good? Why would I want the best for that person after the way that they treated me? And I say, it's not just about that person. It's about you. Do you want to walk through your life angry and negative all the time? Do you want to be upset all the time? If you wish the best for this person, I promise you, you will wake up tomorrow morning feeling great about yourself.
That's so beautiful, and it's such a wonderful testament to your beauty as a human being and your wisdom, frankly, because that is fundamentally true, fundamentally wise, and therefore fundamentally worthwhile. And also, I would expand it even further to say that if you can release yourself, as you're advocating people do, and I advocate people do, from this chain to negativity, because that's what it is. You're holding on to negativity, not them.
Right.
They might be too, but if you're not wishing them well, you're still chaining yourself to negativity.
Right.
And you want to be free of negativity. And when you're wishing someone well who offended you or was abusive to you, you're not saying that's okay. You are doing that, though, if you continue the relationship. That is true. you are complicit if you continue relationships with abusive people. You cannot complain, and you must walk away or know that you're in this with the team too. You're on the same team.
Yeah.
You're always on the same team. So I would say that when wishing people the best on another level is exemplified by this example. Someone challenged me in the way that they challenged you from a different perspective. And they said, you wish everyone the best. How can you wish Putin the best? I said, Putin arguably more than anybody, because with no superiority intended in this statement, I believe that he is coming from a place that is riddled with negativity and compromise of his true beauty and power and love. And if he weren't coming from that place, he would be in receipt of what I want him to be in receipt of, which is you are beautiful and powerful and wonderful, and you don't need to control others and to be in a space where you're more important at times than all the other people in your sphere, et cetera. And I'm in ways forecasting what his reality is, though at the same time, I think that some of it is probably true, if not all of it, because I've also been a dictator. I know what it is to be a dictator in a more microcosmic level, but I wanted control. I was afraid. I was insecure. It had my needs had to be met before everybody else's. I cared what the world thought of me. So many things that don't have anything to do with love. And so when someone says, how can you wish the best for someone like Putin? You wish the best, especially, because how many things would not be happening if people who are in power felt totally secure and loving toward other people? Yeah. How many problems would be obviated if everyone had the best experience in life?
That's a really good point.
that's why I do it. And also when people challenge you on how can you wish that person the best, as we said, you're still chaining yourself to negativity if you don't release yourself from that. And I think sometimes those people are coming from a place of they haven't released themselves from the relationship physically, that they're still texting that person or sending an email or thinking that something can be different when all the evidence is right now it can't. Maybe in the future it can, but right now all the evidence you're getting is this is not going to change.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, when you and your perspective on life, I think, is so inspiring and so wonderful. When you choose acting roles or whatever it is, you're making a film or writing a song, is it all based in this self-awareness? Is it all based in trying to help others, to present positivity? Is it separate? Is that separate?
Nothing is separate. Yeah. Nothing is separate. What we're talking about and what I told you is the most important purpose for any human being, which is loving themselves and loving other people and sharing in the beauty and the power of that. I do that through authenticity. We're all love. That's what I believe. We are all creations of the Lord, fundamental love beings. And we have different ways of being creative. We have different ways of expressing that love. And when I look at a project, if I'm excited to perform the character and I like the language, I'm in. Sometimes if I need the money. And that's not a hollow or superficial thing. If it's not going to cause harm to other people, then I'm in. Period. Though if I had my druthers and it weren't ever about a paycheck, my faith is always involved, because if I am expressing myself at the highest level, I am, as an artist, expressing all beings. So if I were to be offered the role of Stalin, I'd play it, because I want to show people something that's worth looking at about him.
Right.
At times a monstrous human being. I mean, to an extent that is almost unfathomable. I mean, it has to be fathomable because they're facts. Though if it's Stalin, if it's Hitler, anyone who has performed these atrocities in human history, to play them, to access humanity where it looks like there is no humanity, I don't know that there's a higher calling artistically than that. I was talking to a friend of mine today about the perception of evil as opposed to the reality of evil. If you say something is evil and something is good, for me, it doesn't finally make sense, because that means that there are two separate things. And if you believe in the harmony of all things, it's impossible to see things as completely separate. They can look like they're separate, though. Is that because someone is making choice after choice after choice after choice that is in a more negative sphere and makes it look that way because they're choosing something that is not aligned with their positive purpose? Or is it because it is just polarly evil and that's just the way it is? If that's just the way it is, then you can't change it.
Right.
There's no way to change it. You're telling me that that's the way that is, that's the way that is, that's static. That's not subject to greater investigation. It's not subject to greater change. And where does that leave us? With polars and polar opposites that are never going to come together? There's no union?
Right.
Not what I find to be a wise, practicable way of seeing things. So when I look at it, I look at myself as an artist, someone who has capacities to be nasty and horrible, and I love to play horrible people. Because in my life, I spend a lot of time and thought, joyfully, with meditating on how I can be right and good and loving, and it takes energy, and I love to give that energy. There's not a complaint. And when I can release myself from any responsibility from being loving, I can enjoy being in that darkness and know no one's getting hurt. Potentially someone's getting helped, because they can see maybe a loving performance of something that they didn't think had any love in it. That's one example. So they can see something that I didn't think any love could exist there. And I'm not saying you excuse atrocities. I'm not saying that sometimes you need force.
Yeah.
And when you're dealing with people like Stalin and Hitler, you have to, that's a God-given message too. You have to step up and do something. We don't yet live in the peaceful continuum. That's where I think we're finally going, though we're still here evolving toward that, because a lot of people are still working toward that. And I was one of them for a lot of years, struggling, not being peaceful with myself, not being peaceful with others, chugging alcohol and just being a mess. So now that I see I can be a mess on screen or in my work, I can create a horror picture, and it can be bloody and horrible and disgusting and about the concept of evil, not the reality. The compelling, seductive illusion of evil. And I can make it very seductive because it can look really dark. Though if you look enough, what are you there to see? It's not just a polar, unchangeable thing. It's something different than that. And we have to explore it. We have to investigate it.
In looking at your purpose in life and in your work, what is the gift that you want to give to the world as an actor and as a filmmaker, as a musician? What is it you want people to walk away with from your body of work and say, this is what Michael McGlone gave to the world through his art?
Through my art, if I can answer it multifold, because there are different responses that are equally valuable to me. I enjoy my life more. I see something differently to the benefit of how I see things. And these are equal. If you just laugh, or you enjoy your life more, or it brings you some joy that enhances your appreciation of being alive, that's entertainment artist's purpose a lot of the time. I was once told a story about being on a deathbed who laughed at a performance I gave in film, and their friend said, I want to thank you for the joy you gave them when they were on their deathbed. And that enlightened me to the fact that it wasn't just about that person on their deathbed, but his friend who could see his friend be more relieved of the pain he was in and the fear probably of dying maybe, and because I made him laugh. So that's love. I didn't know it was love when I was playing that prick, forgive my language, because the movie was She's the One. And I'm playing an obnoxious prick in that movie who's a lot of fun to watch because he's such an unapologetic prick that he's funny. That you look at him, you think, how could you be that unabashedly horrible and stand by that? But he does, and it's hysterical. So you got this guy laughing on his deathbed and his friend who's also experiencing relief from his friend's relief, and that's very important. And I was gifted with being the deliverer of that experience and then being told about it later, and I didn't know that that happened. So that's a gift to me too. And there's more love in my life because I'm being shared that. So, or if someone looks at something which is equally valuable and they think differently about how they can love another human being, or they have more love in their heart because of what they saw, or they think about something that leads to them being potentially coming from a different perspective that has more nourishment in their life or offers them more nourishment and enhancement, etc. These are the functions of my artistic career that I want to be realized. And as I say, they're equally valuable because you can't say that, no, we have to be serious all the time and just look at what happens with political correctness and the mess that becomes when that's all you're thinking about, because that's all about seriousness. You can't joke about that. You can't joke about that race. You can't joke about that religious background. You can't joke about that ethnicity. You can't joke about anything, finally. Because it's all Hitler's Germany. That's what happens when you take things that seriously. You have to be able to laugh at yourself. You have to be able to laugh at other people. I'm not talking about actively causing harm, because there is racially based bigotry in the world, and there is religious hatred. Though these things masquerade as those things. There's no racial hatred or religious hatred that isn't finally just hatred. It masquerades as, oh, I hate that race or I hate that religion. But that's the masquerade. The truth is you hate, period. If you hate anybody, you hate the whole family. We are a family. Black, white, Asian, Jew, Gentile, whatever it is. We are a family. And if you are hating based on a religion, you are hating the family, period. Hating based on a race, hating based on anything, you are hating, period. And that's why when we look at things microscopically as, oh, this is racially based hatred, I feel that it can be problematic, because how often does that belong to other races? How often, if you even take that too far, ironically, does that become directed toward the race that you think hates you? Anything that's about separation in terms of us is problematic. Brother, sister, family. These are the words that we should be using. And we should all come together to solve any problem that exists.
Most definitely. And a lot of this, these issues that you're talking about, I think also come from personal anger, depression, and
they all do.
It comes out as, racism. It comes out as prejudice. It comes out. But these are people who are angry, miserable, depressed, blaming others. Unfortunately, this is what we're seeing quite a bit.
I would make one benevolent alteration. I have a principle of not seeing things in terms of them being unfortunate because they are here to show us. We're obviously still learning. And when I say family, it's not family, oh, I'm doing good, you're not in the family because you're not doing. Everyone, that's everyone. If you're expressing hatred, it doesn't mean you're not in the family. And like I was saying about wishing people the best, who do you want to cure more than the person who has the illness the most?
Yeah, it's a good point.
And that's our family too. So I know it's compelling to see these things. It's unfortunate, though at the same time, it's more compelling for me to see it as, how's this here to serve us? How is this here to show us that we're not finished with this yet for a reason? And how can we reform anything and everything that needs reformation so that we come to the peaceful continuum that is our destiny?
Mm-hmm. Interesting, yeah. And by the way, just going back for a second, when I was asking about the what you want the purpose of your career to be, and you talked about how a certain line from She's the One, somebody was laughing about. Just so you know, for about 20 years at this point, I've actually been using a line of yours. To this day, I would say at least once a week, I say to someone, you shut your mouth when you're talking to me.
That's from Brothers McMullen.
Right.
Oh my goodness. And I'll tell you this, credit where due. That line was from my dad.
Oh, really?
He said that to me and my brothers growing up. And he also said something else in that movie, in that same scene. Mm-hmm. You shut your mouth when you're talking to me, and all I want to hear out of you is nothing. Those are right from my history. And a little interior fact about the Brothers McMullen. Eddie was still wondering how he was going to conclude the film. And his idea was, how about the brothers are together talking about the dad? And he offered us the opportunity to contribute stories. And I contributed those two. I said, my dad said these things. And Jack, I don't think his dad said the line that he gave to the script, though it was from his life. He heard it somewhere. I don't even know if it was directed at him, though it was definitely in the vein of these other comments. And my father, years later, after you shut your mouth when you're talking to me, as adults, me and I don't think all three brothers, but me and at least my other brother, Joe, I think, could have been all three of us too. We challenged him on that. We challenged him on the statement because it's funny. It's a funny statement. All I want to hear out of you is nothing. And totally consistent with where that statement came from originally when we said, Dad, you said this to us. From the perspective of, that's an absurd statement. And thinking maybe he'll laugh with us, this is his response. You still don't get it. And in fairness, what he was saying was, what he wanted us to take from it was, speak to me through your eyes. Don't disrespect your father by opening your mouth. If you have something you want to say in answer to me, you keep it silent in your eyes, which does have an intelligence and a wisdom to it. My father was a very intelligent and wise person, so I didn't want anyone to walk away with me presenting that as any different. Though it still is funny to me as a statement because how many people are going to be perspicacious enough to see that that's what he was saying? Most people see it the way you saw it, which is that's an absurd thing to say to somebody. Shut your mouth when you're talking to me. They're not going to take the poetic leap that he means talking non-verbally.
Right.
But that is what he meant.
So, yeah, I mean, that's great. It's a classic for me. So I'm just curious, as a actor, as a filmmaker, as a writer, are there any filmmakers that are and actors and writers who have inspired you in your career? Who have you watched over the years and said,
Martin Scorsese, David Chase, Woody Allen. Oh my goodness, Abel Ferrara. So many. Everything that I've ever watched has helped me, whether I like it or not. I'm not saying whether I like it or not, enjoyed the experience. I'm saying whether I like the piece or not. And as Eddie Van Halen's father said to him, learn from how people do it well and learn more. It's more important. I'm paraphrasing, but I think he basically said, learn more from how they don't do it well because you want to avoid that.
Yeah.
So when I see people succeeding, it fills me with joy because I love to see that. And it also is a wonderful learning experience because I'm trying to find out, I'm trying to analyze how they achieve that great performance. So when I'm watching Anthony Hopkins in Shadowlands, and this is one of the experiences where, and he's one who's in the Pantheon, Richard Burton, another Welshman, one of my favorites, Richard Burton, and Anthony Hopkins, also Welsh, and one of the most magnificent actors of all time. I'm watching him in Shadowlands, and he gave me experience I had never had before. I watched him crying. And it was the first time that I watched someone and thought to myself, I had a fear that I wouldn't be able to do that. And it was the first time, granted, this is the size of my ego, that I'm probably in my 20s thinking that this is the only thing that I can't do. So I want to reflect on that. I am aware of that. Mm-hmm. Though that was my reality. My reality was, I think probably that everything I had seen was in the context of I could see myself doing that in some way. And this was the first time that it came through to me that I can't see myself doing that. Not that that lasted, because finally I realized that message came through to me because, first of all, that's an arrogant place to come from. That's the only thing. I mean, clearly there were other things I could learn from too, though I remembered it because I was afraid, because being a great actor meant so much to me that I thought, if I can't do that, what does that mean? If I can't cry like he just cried, what does that mean? And I found that the Lord also gave me the response to that, which is, well, you want to find out how to do that, is the point. And it would still be a significant undertaking to have to create tears in a scene and to have tears in a scene. And I think it's probably a challenge that a lot of actors would consider one of the larger ones, though I have since been able to see that there's a level of vulnerability in yourself that you can achieve where you can potentially access that with more ease than I had when I was in my 20s, where that level of vulnerability probably didn't even exist yet for me, or it existed very minimally. So my multifold answer is all of those different people and so many more who, whether I like the performance or not, have enhanced my life and have shown me greatness, one way or the other, shown me how I can reach more greatness myself or how I can avoid pitfalls that perhaps in one situation they didn't, and maybe I didn't in another situation, et cetera. It's all, though, there as an education. And the ones who have been my most substantial teachers, though I mentioned some of them, Elvis Presley as a singer, he was my first vocal coach. And I say first vocal coach because my desire to sing consciously, because I think I was born with a desire to sing, but it was revealed to me when I was 7 years old because I listened to him. My father sat me down and he put on a record, an Elvis Presley record. And he said, well, actually, the full story is this. He said, sit down, Mike. You're going to listen to the king of rock and roll. And I did. And I loved how he sounded. I loved how he looked. I loved the music. I loved that era of rock and roll. I wanted to sound like him. I wanted to look like him. I sang into a brush that night, into a mirror. And testament to my little Leo ego, I heard myself and I thought, you sound pretty good. So I, in that moment, thought, you can sing. All right. So this feels good. And you want to sing. And so keep doing that. And it's resulted in a career. You know, this is how these things happen when you're born to do something.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting you say, you learn from everyone.
Everybody.
I think that's so true.
Everybody.
Some years ago, Sylvester Stallone, he won a Golden Globe Award, and he got up there and he said, "I am the sum of everyone I've ever met."
What a great comment. And that's not unexpected, that level of wisdom from him, because he is a great genius. People who know his almost blinding level of stardom sometimes don't know how deeply talented as a creator and a writer he is.
Yeah.
And some of his acting performances are some of my favorite acting performances from anybody. Rocky is one of the great performances by any living human being, period. I eat that film up every time I see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he wrote it. He starred in it.
He did.
And then he directed, I think, all the rest of them. That movie belongs in the top 5 movies of all time, in my opinion.
Agreed. In fact, the final scene of Rocky, I actually think is one of the best scenes of all time, because one of the best things that happens in the film is that he actually loses this fight in the first film.
Right.
He loses the fight.
Right.
And
with an argument that he could have possibly been the winner.
Right.
Yeah.
And what was beautiful about it was John Avildsen focused the camera specifically just on him, and you in the audio in the background, you hear them saying Apollo Creed is the winner, but the camera is focused on Rocky. And I think that's just a beautiful thing, because it's showing how he felt about himself. That's it. That's what matters.
He achieved what he wanted to achieve.
Right.
Another thing about that may not have been intentional, though I don't want to underestimate intentionality with all those brilliant people, because it could have been absolutely intentional. The last line of that movie, to my recollection, is him telling his woman he loves her.
Right. That's correct. Yes.
So he has all this.
Yeah.
And then... And he's accomplished what he wanted to accomplish.
Right.
And the last line of the movie is her telling him he loves her, and him saying he loves her, and in the way he said it, I love you.
Yeah, right.
I love you.
Right.
And which is different than I love you too.
Right.
It's got a different quality. It's not my love is better than you. It's not my love is greater than yours, etc. Though I love you. I love you.
Yeah.
And the way this blue collar fighter, brawler said that to his woman, you see so much in the universe. You see the vulnerability, you see the grit, you see it's just, I mean, I could list moments from that film so at great length that are genius and so enhancing. Speaking of the value of art form.
Yeah.
You see so many moments in that brilliant movie that make you smarter about people, that make you enjoy life more, that make you see relationships differently, that make you see the benefit of sticking with it and working hard and achieving a goal. And you don't have to win, though have a goal.
Right.
Because it's not necessarily about the winning, though work hard and have that goal.
The journey.
That's right.
Right. So, Michael, we've seen quite a vast body of work from you in terms of film as well as TV. We just mentioned now, you're doing NCIS Hawaii, SWAT, The Rookie, Feds. Do you have a preference for TV, episodic versus movies, or does it just depends on the project?
I have loved almost every job that I've had. If I didn't love it, it either had to do with something that I was challenged by personally, or certain elements of the project interfered with that enjoyment. I would say that if the script is strong, that's the first thing. And then if the people I'm working with are enjoyable, that also is a great help. To be able to share myself and have people share themselves with me the way that I really like to do is important. And not everybody wants it to be as abundant as I generally prefer it to be. And I'm not saying prefer it to be that I want them to be different. What I'm saying is that some people don't want to have as much connection and conversation as I do. I love to love people. I love to talk to people. And on a set, if we can all be joking and having fun, if that's not inappropriate, then I want to have that sense of community in the process. So that's on a personal level. though on a professional level, artistically, just from an aesthetic standpoint, the project that's going to be able to express itself as wonderfully as it can are the favorites. And again, from an aesthetic standpoint, where you look at a film like Goodfellas and you cannot say, for me, with any accuracy, that there's anything wrong with that film. Everything is right about that film.
Yeah, it's excellent.
That also belongs in the top 5, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so something that would have the capacity potentially to be expressed as excellently as something like that was and is, and that happens in TV, that happens in film, especially now. It didn't always in the past happen with the same parody in television as it did. There was great TV, but it was a different kind of genre to a certain extent. And it still is a different genre to a certain extent, though the excellence that people are achieving in film and what they're achieving in TV is more similar.
Yeah.
Now, you could even use the example of Goodfellas on that's how I want my show to look.
Yes.
And that's how excellent I want the writing to be. And that's how excellent I want the actors to be. And the whole milieu of Goodfellas could be a template for how you want to make the show look. So then you make a show that's a 12-episode feature film, really. It's a television show on a streaming network, though look at Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
That's essentially a multi-hour feature film.
Yeah.
And that's in the pantheon of TV shows too.
Right. I'm just curious, when you, looking back at when you were first coming up in the 90s, in those days when you were hearing these stories about Clerks and McMullen and Blair Witch and Slackers and these in very low budget independent films that were selling to distributors out of Sundance and all that kind of stuff. Do you think that could still happen now, or do you think the landscape is very different?
Well, the landscape is very different, and yes, it can still happen despite that fact. The landscape doesn't have to be the same for the truth to be unchanged. And the truth is, if you work hard enough and you stay at it, you got Rocky. And I'm talking about Rocky at the end of the fight. You achieved your goal.
Right.
And success is variable in its definition. Success is not always, I sold a film to Fox Searchlight or 20th Century, etc. Your success could be Rocky. I'm not the winner, but I'm the winner to me.
Right.
I did what I wanted to do. I'm on my feet at the end of this match. That's my victory. I am the champion, and I got this woman. I'm a champion. I got everything I want. Everything I want. And that's the authenticity that you want to come from. If your idea of success is based on what someone else thinks is success, that is flawed. And I don't say that in a negatively judgmental way. It's a positive judgment I'm making. That's a flaw. You want the success you want. And there's no greater success than loving another human being. And you can do that in a variety of different ways. And you love yourself best by being as authentic as you can be. And creating what you truly want to create is giving yourself a lot of love, because you're going to love what you're doing and you're going to love creating it. You're going to have a good attitude about the people you bring into it, generally speaking, because you're going to be happy. And it's going to be wonderful. So that's what I would say is the most important thing to remember about achievement. Make sure it's based on your value and what you want to do with your life.
Right.
And getting a lot of people to see your work is valid. Every artist has it. Every artist wants as many people, whether they're Leo or not. Leos have it maybe exceptionally, but you won't meet an actor who got into this industry to be left alone. And that's why I advocate for embracing when people, as long as you're not being rude, embracing when people want to shake your hand and get to know you, and not to ever come from a place of letting someone know or informing them it's a bother that they solicited you, because it's important for me to humbly remember that that audience member is indispensable, absolutely indispensable. And I have been working for that audience member from the very beginning. In addition to my own authentic pursuits as an artist, though my authentic pursuit as an artist folds into it the desire for other people to see my art. That is a part of my authenticity. It is not inauthentic. I was born to want attention. And pursuit of attention, as long as it's still loving, is a healthy thing.
Agreed. Yes. And in conclusion, in our last minute here, I just want to ask you, do you have a dream project, a Michael McGlone project? This is your, I guess we could say Rocky, right? What's your dream? Do you have a dream project? So not a role, not a person I want to play, a dream project. It could be in different mediums. Correct. Yeah. Okay. Do you have a certain story, or it could be a role you want to play, a certain story you want to tell, a project that this is your ultimate, this is the one.
This is the one. The one is a challenge for me because I love what I do, and so many things I've created, they don't all affect me the same way. Though if I feel that I've expressed it to the degree that I've been given the capability to express it, I love it. Mm. In that category, though, I will say this. To be at the center of a show I created, meaning that I'm the creator of it and I'm performing a role in it and I'm producing it, that situation is something that I absolutely love. So it doesn't have the specificity that I think you were originally looking to gain, though that is probably in its relative specificity, the situation that is the dream for me. That's where there's I feel like the highest amount of joy.
Fulfillment, yeah.
Yeah, because I created it. I'm in control of how it's being expressed, and I'm sharing it with other people on the set, and then I'm sharing it with other people in a more abundant way going forward. It's everything, every box is checked.
Right. Yeah, I love that. That's great. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Please, you're so welcome. Thank you.
Michael McGlone, please visit michaelmcglone.com. Check out his upcoming projects. I'm sure he has a lot of great things happening. You mentioned you're right now here in New York City. You got something yes. brewing, so we're looking forward to checking that out.
Thank you.
Kenny the Gun, right? Check that out as well. Thank you so much, Michael McGlone. Again, I'm Jonathan Lipp, and thank you for watching the Big Apple Film Festival podcast.